Hello to everyone, dear participants. Welcome to our webinar. Today, we will share with you information about the management of cow in the transition period under heat stress. We will have two speakers who will share their valuable information with us on this subject. Dr. Ousama is a well-established consultant and well-published scientist with more than 120 papers and abstracts. Ousama focuses on ruminant clinical nutrition as it related to metabolic health and the use of feed additives in animal industry. Dr. Zankar is currently Jefo Vice President of Sales and Global Technical Manager. He is an experienced veterinary with a master degree in gynecology with over 20 years of experience in farm management in the Middle East. My name is Murat. I'm currently territory manager for Jefo Nutrition. I received veterinary medicine from Uludağ University Veterinary Faculty and my Master of Science degree for veterinary microbiology. Dear attenders, you can ask your questions about presentation in the questions and answer section. You can ask on the GoToWebinar platform in English. You can ask also Turkish questions on the Turkish platform. I hope our webinar will be useful for you. Ousama,
thank you, Murat. Thank you, everyone. Say good morning, good afternoon, good evening for wherever you are in the world. We're very happy and thank you so much for Jefo for the opportunity, and thank you for the wonderful Jefo team and the IT team that made this happen. And most importantly, thank you so much to you for your time and your valuable time. I'm gonna go quickly over our outline for today's webinar. We'll do a little bit of introduction on heat stress and its impact on ruminant in general. We'll talk a little bit on the physiology of heat stress, and then we'll jump into managing heat stress nutrition-wise. And I will be giving you a really exciting ration examples and how I troubleshoot it as a nutritionist for that transition cow and during that heat stress. And at the end, Jefo solutions will be presented by Dr. Zankar with focus on that transition health and liver function. And at the end, we'll have plenty of time to have a discussion with you, hear from you, and get to answer your questions. However, in between, if you have any question, as Murat mentioned, you can type in them on the English or the Turkish platform, and we will be very happy to answer them. Heat stress has a significant impact on the well-being of this cow. The cow go through a lot of stress during the summer if it's not managed well, and it's well established that has an impact on the health productivity of this animal. Heat stress, it is well established and noticeable that affects milk production, impact the immune system, and at the end, the reproduction of this cows under heat stress don't show detectable heat, and also, well, probably don't retain those oocytes or being able to be effective. Now, we focus so much on the lactating cow, but the dry cow or the transition cow prior to partition are often overlooked. So heat stress do impact that dry cow or transition cow prior to partition as much as that lactating cow. So research has shown that heat stress can reduce feed intake for up to 50% for that transition cow, which can affect the subsequent lactation. So we'll take care of the dry cow prior partition to ensure that we don't have a drop also in her peak milk during her lactation. It also affects the fetus growth. So cows that are stressed during transition or the end part of the gestation can calve earlier and have basically smaller fetuses. I think it's really common that heat stress is the deadliest and the costliest, and that's why we're trying to shed light as much as possible on this topic. For example, the Californian heat wave in 2006 resulted in the death of over 30,000 cows, and there's a lot of examples that I can bring in. So the financial burden, I can find numbers about in the US, over $1 billion of US dollars in a year, and that number is underestimated because only accounts for the loss of production. So the human population is growing, and we all hear and talk about climate change and how that impacts the global warming. Now, the population, the continuing growth of this population is focused in the tropical and subtropical area, for example, Southeast Asia, and in these geographical regions, they lack the facility and resources required to have an effective heat abatement strategy. So basically, in other words, this region will be hit harder with the climate change. What will that do? It will limit protein production, and that will basically reduce the sense of food security in the world. So that's something it needs to be done about abatement strategies for heat stress to ensure the continuous and food security for years to come. So climate change can impact the productivity on animals directly or indirectly. It has an impact on the animal and its physiology and its metabolism, as we see. But also there will be less accessible feed and lower quality with the droughts and lower pasture yields and so on. So not to mention the associated increase of disease occurrence that's predicted to happen with the global warming. Now, ruminants has much lower threshold. In other words, they are less tolerant to heat stress compared to non-ruminant animals. And the reason is that the ruminant rely on fermenting feed, and that fermentation comes with a heat of fermentation that's generated that puts a burden on the animal. So in this chart, this is a study that I've conducted in 2008. On the left-hand side, we're measuring ruminal pH, and that reflects the acidity and the fermentation rate. And at the same time, the generation of temperature in that rumen. So as we see at the bottom, this is just 24 hours animal fed in the morning, 7 o'clock and midday. And that's a 24-hour period where fermentation takes place, breakdown of feed, and so does the temperature. We see these spikes in temperature, it just interrupted by drinking pouch. So this basically animal had a drink, temperature dropped down, but it is on the continuous. And it can hit a 40, 41 degrees in a normal condition. There's no heat stress there. Now, this increase in ruminal temperature is not associated with an increase in the core body temperature, just because the animal is able to dissipate. The ruminant animal is equipped to dissipate this heat. So that heat of fermentation. There's another heat of metabolic processes. They breaking down feed, all liver function, all the function of other ruminants also generate metabolic heat. And there's physical heat. The animal is moving, generating heat. So all of these can have a significant heat load on the animal that has to dissipate one way or another. As I mentioned, the temperature buildup is not a problem if the animal can dissipate that heat, but when the environment is so hot or the animal doesn't have the ability to dissipate that heat, what we will see is a rise in rectal temperature. So here at the bottom is rectal temperature measured in Celsius, start from 38 to 39.5. So 39.5 is to 40 is 1 degree, 1.5 degrees Celsius rise, but it's usually associated with a significant drop in milk yield. So measuring rectal temperature can be a very effective tool in assessing all your strategies, your abatement strategy, your facility, your diet, all of it. Now, there's a lot of different ways now with the advancement in technology in measuring how you assess it. Near infrared is being validated, for example, but there's other telemetry where you can have a indwelling or basically measuring as simple as just measuring, making sure that you continuously measure the temperature on your farm using one of these very inexpensive tools these days. So keep an eye. Heat waves comes in simply waves that can cause a lot of damage in a few days. Basically, animal can dissipate heat. Ruminant rely mostly when it's about 30, 35 degrees, rely on evaporative heat. So that would be sweating and panting. Ruminant doesn't do sweating really well, so they rely on panting to get rid of it. In some cases, they do have an open mouth breathing, which they end up losing a lot of basically fluids, and they also lose that disrupts their blood pH. It can cause some an increased pH in the blood, so alkalosis. How do we measure temperature? Well, we know humidity plays a huge role. We are human. We get bothered by high humidity, and so does these animals. The THI is basically temperature humidity index, where we can say assess the index or basically that stress at different stages. The yellow, for example, here is where these animals start feeling the heat stress. The orange is basically the moderate to severe. The red is moderate to severe, sorry, that's mild to moderate. And severe basically can result into animal death. The animal will try to fight this by basically, this is RPM, which is respiration per minute. It can go up to 60, 75, 85. And then at this point becomes ineffective in abatement of heat. And with that, the rectal temperatures, as we mentioned, keep jumping up. So basically 40, you'd know that your animal is at danger of basically dying at some point. In Canada, you know, we have today, it's basically 30 degrees outside my window, and I have 100% humidity. So if the temperature inside the barn is basically 25 with 100% humidity, or even more, that's a recipe for a drop in intake and animal stress. So I think in Turkey, Abdallah Murat will explain some of this. I think it can in Turkey would go from basically to hot and dry to some regions where it is humid and a bit cooler. So Murat, please, you can explain more.
Yeah, thank you for showing the temperature and humidity index for us. As we showing on our maps, the map shows Turkey's average summer temperature, and also we have another maps shows the summer humidity average of Turkey. When we calculated the temperature humidity index by looking at the two maps, we can see that the index is above 70 or 75% during the summer in the Central Anatolia, Aegean, and Marmara region of Turkey. Yeah. These regions are places where the industrial animal husbandry is intense. That's why we should take care of attention or attenders. They should take care of both of them, not only temperature. Temperature and humidity gives us temperature humidity index.
Yeah, thank you, Murat. So it really, in any big country, similar to the Canada, where you'd see some mountain areas, that's not humid, where we say regions where it's really humid, it's cool, region that's dry and hot. So all of these could similarly deliver, I'd say something around this line here, where cows becomes under heat stress. So share with you some about North America. I think this is, you would expect that just cooler temperatures in the north and more of a hotter climate in the south, especially around the Gulf of Mexico in the US. And it gets really humid in this region around the Great Lakes, which has basically 20% of the world hot water. But we talk about, so temperature, humidity, we get THI, but it's all about the duration. So if you stand in hot weather for an hour, it's different from 3 hours. It's different if you do it 10 hours in a row. So what we calculate is the amount of hours this animal at a given threshold, for example, the number of hours above 72, and so on. So this map in the US basically showing the regions in the south here, especially around the Gulf of Mexico, where basically there was 1,300 hours a year on average, or basically a year above 1,300 hours. This is basically 54 days of continuous heat, but or you can say there's 108 days of 12 hours per day. So that could be significant. And if you look at the black dots here, you'll find that most, basically 70% of the dairy operation in the US are located in regions where it's a bit cooler. So that's Central Valley in California, Idaho. You look at Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and that's New York. In the regions where in the southern, there's less in Florida and southern part of let's say Alabama, Mississippi, and so on. And that's really focusing and making sure that they're, reasonable environment for successful operation. Similar, a study was done in 2020 in Canada where they measured also the amount of time. So on the right-hand side, this is Ontario, where I live, where there's about, on average, 50 days above 72. And on the left, Quebec, about 19 days. So that's still, although it's a cold country, but with the humidity and the heat waves that comes, you would expect that there's cows that should be happy, but that's not the case. So it does have a significant damage. So with the heat stress, we know it affects milk production, protein, and milk yield, but that affects it at different threshold. Fat yield mostly affected at 57. So some may not think 57 of a THI could have an effect, but the data shows that, once you go a THI of 57, basically, you would start having heat stress. And later on, you will see the impact on rumen, on protein yield and milk yield.
People's knows these figures well. They can see such kind of figures on the under the heat stress every time.
Yeah, that's data. That's a really fresh study out of University of Guelph here in Ontario. So now the other, this is also a very important point to show you. So basically, if you look at this line here, this is the temperatures, and that's on the right-hand side. So averaging between, that's an overall 20, 15, all the way to 30, and this is one of the highest producing counties in Florida. So this is an average. On the left-hand side, we'll see the milk production per month for these cows. Now, you would expect when the temperature are the lowest, the production is basically the highest, but that's not the case. The highest production was not in January. Basically, it was in March. And the reason that these probably cow that are milking now, they were stressed when they're dry. It becomes more clear at this point here. You look at the highest temperatures is in July and August, but yet the lowest milk is in October, September. So the data shows that there is a carryover with heat stress. So these cows that contributed to lowering the average milk production basically were not stressed when they're lactating. They were stressed when they're dry. They were dry in the summer season, and yet they start milking here. They had lower milk production and lower intake. So I can't emphasize enough how important it is to look at to consider your dry cows and late gestation cows in any heat stress abatement strategy that you have on farm.
Ousama, you mean that this is a strange figures? You mean that people should not be relaxed on the autumn time about the heat stress?
Yes. So here in October and November, you'd expect to have a high September, October high milk, but yet the weather is good outside, but you still have low because of this carryover effect from the summertime. Because cows are stressed when they're dry and now they're milking. They will carry that stress into their subsequent milking.
Can we say that those cows calving on the summer times? That's why they have a carry effect. I mean,
yeah.
Our topic is a transition cow management under the heat stress.
Yes, exactly. So these cows calved at the end of the summer, but they've gone through the heat stress in the summertime, and temperature is good, but they're yet still had depressed intake or depressed milk production. Not only, Murat, on basically the milk and the effect on the subsequent milk, but also the placental growth. Now, with the cow trying to dissipate this heat, all the blood is pumped to the skin for the sweating, for example, and now this blood has to come from somewhere, from organs, major organs, so that deprive the placenta from blood flow and will result in basically reduction or compromised fetal growth. And not just the growth of this, but also can have an effect, a subsequent effect on the immune function of these newborn calves. So it affects the milk production and the growth of the fetus or these future offsprings.
Okay, thank
you. Okay, the last bit, I just wanted to share with you this table here done across sheep. I wanted to include some data about sheep because they do feel the heat stress. And this study looked at, that's HT heat stress, and this is control. Looked at the fetus of the newborn weight. So there was actually a compromised, a reduction on the body weight of those newly born fetuses where their moms were basically heat stressed during the summertime. So it's not just cattle, it's sheep or any gestating animal that had to put up through the heat stress in the summertime and then deliver in the fall. Now, I want to jump quickly. I've got only 4 slides where I would like to cover the physiology of heat stress. So we agree that heat stress, we feel it. It's not just cows don't feel like they want to eat it's not just about food intake. It affects a whole physiology. It affects most of the metabolic functions of those cows. Now, fresh cows are especially susceptible because they just freshened, they gone through a lot of challenges, and they can't eat enough. A cow that had just calved has half the size of the rumen for a cow that's 100 days in milk. So the fetuses, remember, took most of the space. A rumen, dry cows is low intake. It will take about 50, 60 days or even more for that rumen to adapt and grow and that cow to be able to eat. A cow producing, in our cases, 40, 45 liters of milk, and basically her intake can only support about maybe 25 or less than 30. So this cow rely on mobilizing tissue for lipids, for energy, for milk, and also for protein. So with heat stress, we have lower intake. As we said, this cow go through a negative energy balance. So that's not just the energy, that's all nutrients that she puts in the milk, but yet cannot retain from intake because of the low intake. So this cow, as I show here, they have to mobilize adipose tissue. This adipose tissue generate NEFA, the non-esterified fatty acid, that provides basically energy to all tissue, including muscles, for milk, and also for the liver, where ketone bodies, which is another source of energy, is generated. Now, glucose is exclusive in a fresh cow for the use by the mammary gland for the milky glucose. Glucose is not supposed to be used by any other tissues. They have NEFA, they have ketone bodies. Now, what happens is, how does glucose become exclusive to just the mammary gland, is that fresh cow has low insulin. The pancreas is not sensitive to glucose, so have low level of insulin. As we know, insulin promotes the uptake of glucose. And when tissue has the chance to uptake glucose, they'll utilize it. But that is not the case for the fresh cow. So fresh cow have glucose exclusive, and Dr. Zankar will talk more about this. Again, the rumen generate volatile fatty acid. Propionate is utilized for glucose synthesis in the liver, and acetate can also be utilized as a source of energy in milk. So there's basically 4 sources of energy, a lot of energy available for this fresh cow. So she has back fat that can mobilize, and she has a lot of propionate coming from the rumen. It's synthesized into glucose in the liver, which is exclusive for the use of milk. So it's a great system. What happens with heat stress? Heat stress depresses mobilization. So although the cow might have good condition, I have a body condition, let's say 3.5 out of 5 on the 5 scale, but with the heat stress, this cow does not mobilize, it cannot mobilize. So this is the NEFA as a measure of mobilization. And the red basically is showing a flat line here. From day 1 to day 9, there was no mobilization for issue.
Sorry, I'm cutting you. Even a lower dry matter intake, the cows cannot supply enough esterified fatty acid from body fat.
Yeah, just because of the heat stress. Now, the heat stress, as we said, is not just a drop in intake, it's a whole physiological response. And with that, the insulin here, I'll explain it in after. So we said mobilization is impaired, and that deprives the cow of a main source of energy, which is the NEFA, which usually supply the cow with alternative energy because she can't use glucose. What happens is during heat stress, the pancreas becomes very sensitive to glucose and start producing insulin. Now, when insulin, what happens is all tissue start uptaking using that. Remember, before it was only exclusive to the mammary gland, and now it becomes other tissue has access to it, and that deprives the mammary gland from this glucose. So what happens is during heat stress, with this hyperinsulinemia, the elevated insulin level, is that cow loses the major sources of energy being the NEFA generated, and glucose is shared with other tissues as a source of energy. So what happens, cow also start breaking down muscles to generate glucose. And that's why you say with these cows in heat stress, these amino acids, this protein is utilized for glucose, and you'll have a spike in your urea in the blood. So you'll find high mercury, nitrogen, and pun. And that's just a sign of breakdown, that the cow is so desperate to get energy, which you can't get from fat or the rumen. Now, I hope this is clear, which Dr. Zankar will get to. The message for me is just to send it. It's not a drop-in feed intake. It's a whole coordinated physiological response that involves the liver function, but also that also involves the gut. Now, as we said, the blood flow is directed into the skin, and that what would be called vasodilation. So the arteries become larger and bigger diameter to improve blood flow to the skin to help with the dissipating of heat. But that has to come from somewhere. So there will be vasoconstriction in major tissues, not just the placenta, but also the biggest organ with the GI tract. Now, the GI tract is very sensitive to lack of oxygen. That's hypoxia, but also limit the nutrients. So you're creating a scenario where you've got a GI tract has a very intact lining that prevents the endotoxin, the bacteria, from coming in the blood. Now, what happens during hypoxia and the limited blood supply is a lot of these bacteria and the endotoxins get through the lining. Now, usually you'll see these tight junction proteins that bind cells together, and these are lost, and becomes that barrier is more easy for these endotoxins to supply, and that triggers an immune response. Immune response usually, immune cells can utilize multiple sources for energy, but when it's activated, it has to rely on glucose. So that's another source of glucose that, as I mentioned here, another source of glucose that basically being pulled towards the immune system. Now, Dr. Zankar will also touch on this in his introduction. So I wondered if there's any question up to this point. Now we've been about 30 minutes in, we've got 10 more minutes. I'll talk about the nutrition strategy and guidelines. And before I start talking about nutrition, I'm a nutritionist, clinical nutritionist by training, and I've really done a lot about this topic. But when it comes to heat stress, there is no magical pill that you can give that cow and it will dissolve or remove the issue of heat stress. It all starts by having a very effective abatement strategy. So shades, fans, soakers, monitoring, anything you do, that's the first step. If you don't do that, anything else as far as nutrition is really not going to help you. It's not going to help that poor cow as well. So make sure that you've got a well-effective abatement strategy. Monitor temperatures. Shade is extremly important for that cow.
Yeah.
So,
sorry, I'm cutting you because
no,
at the same time I'm getting some questions. I would like to ask some of them.
Sure.
It's interested at those topic. How it can the heat stress affected of stockine production in the liver on the heat stress time.
On what? Sorry, say that again.
How the heat stress can affect the stockine productions in the liver?
In the how it affects?
Yeah.
Are you talking about liver function, Murat? Is that?
Yeah. It's about liver functions. We know the stockine production, how it can affect it under the heat stress of stockine production.
I still don't get the question. So the stockine density of these animals?
Yeah, would we?
Abdallah, you can help me on this?
What do you mean, Murat? Transfer the question correctly from Turkish. I know that it's a Turkish question, right? So,
Yeah.
what do you mean stocking?
There is a stocking production in the body. They are wondering that how it can affect this stocking production on the heat stress time.
I didn't get the word, but
let's leave it till the end,
yeah.
Murat, and then we'll
okay.
try to figure out the. So I'm going to continue now with this. As I said, the nutrition comes as secondary. The primary strategy should be an abatement strategy where you have heat, fan soakers, whatever system that you feel that your cows are doing well. The second most important part is access to clean and cool water. This is actually vitally important. This cow will be sweating a lot and will require more increase. Some of them said about 50% increase in water intake. And cool water also, this is Dr. Zankar, he's done a lot of work in the Middle East. He says it has to be cool water. And it does make a difference. And I showed you how even room temperature got basically cooled down with this cold water. Now, this water, you make sure it's spread everywhere and it's available to all cows, especially after they walk out of milking. Usually cow milk, after they milk, they get very thirsty, they get dehydrated. And then having enough access to that water after milking is vital. As good, so regardless of what ration you're feeding, also, these cows are not feeling well, they're not eating well, they have to have an access of a really good quality. Like any of us, we feel sick, we feel like we want to eat something that's really nutritious, whether it's a soup, whatever it is. So that's no different for those cows. They need an access. If you have a high density, a high stocking density in your barn, some of these cows can't compete for the feed. You want to make sure that you address these before we work on ration composition. That's vitally important. So access to water, access to shade, access to water, and access to feed. If you do that, that's basically, you've done 80% of the job. So we talked about the heat of fermentation that's generated from that cow. So there's a lot of strategies where you can feed 40% during the cooler time, and then you can have 60% of this intake. So don't fill up the cows in the morning and then they have to battle the heat at noon. You try to basically reverse that while cows get loaded with the feed at night or in the afternoons. With that, I think practice is widely done in the poultry industry. Just with cows, some of them are fed once in the morning and then it's 50 degrees in the afternoon. That just does not go well with the cow. Other strategies try not to have larger meals, spread these meals across the day. So I'd say 40, 60, and then spread in between. And now this thing, what I want to talk about is in the next few minutes is basically increase the energy density of this diet. So cows are eating less, they need more nutrients. The common sense is just to increase this density, but without basically without inducing acidosis. Acidosis could be a big issue, especially when forages are scarce. And I will give you an example, a ration examples. Hopefully you'll have time to spend more time on this. So buffers are great to use at this point, especially with potassium carbonate here, magnesium oxide. So a combination of different buffers to allow to improve rumen condition and basically reduce the occurrence of acidosis and improve the digestibility. Of course, you want to have adequate levels of all vitamins, including B vitamins. So we mentioned heat stress is not just a drop in intake. It is more, it's mediated by insulin. And then we should focus, Dr. Zankar will focus on the glucose synthesis and how we can improve liver function. There's a lot of feed additive I can use. And I'm sure I'll be asked about some of these. I'd say, give it a try. If it works under your condition in your diet, just use it. If it doesn't, make sure that these cows has focus on major vitamins. Okay, I'm a bit really excited about this, and this section. This is really wanted to give the nutritionists, especially in the audience, the chance to look at the real ration and what we do, and how we can. I use, of course, when we talk about nutrition, you must use a good, reliable software. I use the CNCPS model because it has a model, a Rumen submodel. So, but whatever software you use, make sure you rely on a reliable feed analysis, because you can have the best software, but yet you don't do analysis, or your lab doesn't do a good analysis. You don't know what you're feeding simply. So you can't continue unless you have it. So we talk about the level of nutrients, but also the particle size. So the physical effectiveness is very important. So we have also assessed that on farm. And all of these allow you to input it into the software. You need to know your cows, the level of body condition score. I use a scale from 1 to 5. I'll look at them. I know my cows, when they're fresh, they start at 3.5, and they expect them to lose a body condition or less than a body condition score by the time they hit peak intake. So you need to know your cows. All these also inputted into the software. Now, you can manage them indifferently. You can do one group TMR or one ration feed it to all, or if you have in a bigger situation where you have the luxury of using different rations, that's also an option. I've got a screenshot. I'll walk you in the next 5 minutes into a number of my screenshots. So basically, this is a cow at 15 days in milk, and in second lactation, she's doing 35. Basically, this cow, I'm not gonna go through a lot of details here. It's fed corn silage, haylage, high moisture corn. I'm expecting it to basically produce 35 kgs. This cow can't do it because it has to mobilize. So basically, the ration is providing me with only about 28 kgs. The rest has to come from the mobilized fat. In the second slide, I'll show you, this is the ration with basically with the cow being able to mobilize these nutrients. So this cow is happy producing 35 kgs. Now, we talked about the input as far body weight and analysis and all of that, but what's also important is that you input your environmental, so the model can predict the spike in the requirements. So there's basically about 10 to 20 increase in the requirements alone due to heat stress. So it's double the trouble when you have higher requirement, but you've got lower intake, and that's where you see the drop in milk production. In this case, I dropped the temperature. I increased it from 15 to 25, right? And I had 50 to 90% humidity. That's all what I've done. And the model says, okay, well, your THI is 85. You've got 14% an increase in maintenance due to heat stress. And you should watch for your potassium level, something we discussed. Now, what does that mean? It just means that this cow fed the same ration, but going through heat stress, she had 2.3 more megacalories to spend on being able to fight the heat stress. Now, the model telling me this cow is going to eat 17 kgs as well. So if I drop this to 18, boom, if I look at it, the cow basically had a drop in 6.4 kilogram. That's what the model's telling me. That's provided she can eat 18. Some may not be able to eat 18. So it's all there. Now, this is going to go quickly through this, and this is more of the ration guidelines. So basically, I'm going to drop the forages. I'm going to drop basically the level of NDF, but without inducing subacute terminal acidosis. I'm not going to go over a lot of these details, but I can share this with you, and that guideline can differ from place to place. But the message that I want to deliver is that you're going to drop the forage part just to increase the density. You can increase the starch without introducing acidosis. So basically, I'm still within the maximum amount of starch, within the minimum amount of forages. Basically, what I also pay attention to here is my potassium and sodium. Now, how much extra? The software predicts it as well, and predicts that, well, there's a 10% increase in sodium. So there's no need to load these animals with minerals that they're not going to be able to basically break down. And that's basically what I've done. I've implemented a lot of changes to the ration, and I was able to get it back to 31 kgs. Now, I can do it 34 or 33, but that would be more on paper. I'm happy by recovering, these cows are expected to drop 6 kg. I was happy to recovering 3 to 4 kgs, and not good. And that's, I can do that improvement in increments. I can't just spike starch or reduce forage. I have to do that in increments to make sure the cow respond. And if the cow respond and doing well, I can just go to the next step. So basically, I'm a bit over my time here in 5 minutes, but I'm sure we can spend hours on this topic. And I look forward to having more into the guidelines for ration formulations and discuss more what the other terms mean. But with that, I'm just gonna move on and hand this to Dr. Zankar, who's gonna talk more about Jefo solutions and the products. Abdallah, it's all yours. Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Good. Thank you, Dr. Ousama, for this impressive, nice presentation. I want to go a bit on. So I know I have a short time, and I will try to do my best on this presentation, so I can give time for some questions and answers. And at the end, I want to thank for all the guys joining us today. It's a pleasure always, and I'm happy to be a part of this interesting discussion. Just to let you know that Dr. Ousama is with us, and he will stay with us for the future as a consultant to reply and answer all your concerns and questions regarding nutrition. He did a bit on nutrition today, and I would love that you can share with him in the future some diets, some ideas that you are doing in the Middle East, Turkey, and other countries. Of course, people joining us today. And for sure we will have fun together answering all these questions. Good. So going back to my presentation, I'll go on the international presence of Jefo. So Jefo is a company founded in 1982, and it's a 40 years of presence worldwide. We have 11 legal entities all over the world. So as we said, we are commercially active in 80 countries in the world, and we have a hell of a team, a good team that's supporting our people, our sales people all over the world. Of course, we have 14 up to 16 today species specialists that can also help you to improve and make your life easier. And of course, we try to do our best on all these activities. So please, Morgan. So could the liver during transition produce enough glucose to cover the needs? I will go again on Ousama's comments on glucose production, and I will do my best on a bit giving you an idea about this important task for cows to deal with the transition at the beginning, transition period, and of course to deal with the heat stress. So if we go the third slide, please, next slide. If you go on the need of glucose during transition, it's important to understand that not just milk production need glucose, need lactose. It's also immunity. So we assume to have and most of the studies showed that it's important to have glucose production for immunity and glucose production for milk production. So the requirements for activating immune system in 12 hours is 1 kilogram. It means 2 kilograms in 24 hours, 2 kilograms of glucose, of sugar in 24 hours. And of course, we will need also for a cow for 30 liters of milk, 2 kilograms of glucose. Imagine that the huge amount of glucose production that this cow should produce during her first days of calving, okay, to cover all these needs. it's a huge amount of glucose that needed to be produced during these few days. And this is why most of the cows, they suffer drop in glucose production, drop in glucose in the blood. Next, please. So if you look at this, it's a nice paper. It's a bit old paper, but it's a very interesting paper, nice paper showing the demand and the supply, starting before calving 21 days and showing the high supply of glucose and the low demand of glucose, where the first day after calving, cows start to be in need of this product, glucose, and accordingly the demand comes to be very high and the supply goes very low, and this is why these cows start to suffer a glucose deficiency. Accordingly, we need to have a chance to support these animals. So what we do was, what we start to do normally, we start to inject animals or we start to drench animals, and this is not a bad practice. It's an old practice. It's a very important practice to support and treat these animals from this problem. Please, next. So if you look at, I used to do my practice in the Middle East in my life. I'm sure that we have some attendees that are very good friends that we had with them a lot of discussions during my veterinary life, and of course we did a bit of nutrition in these farms. And I always say that there is two, when you go and look at the transition group, there is two groups in this group. There is one group that the cows that they will be healthy cows, they have no problems, they calve, they survive, we say that they have no troubles after calving, and they can reproduce without a problem. And there is some cows that they will have different problems. So if you look at a transition cows with a healthy liver, every cow in your herd in transition time before calving, they will have to have a bit of drop in dry matter intake. So we need to look at this as a normal case. Okay, so the drop is happening, and then these cows are strong enough after the first day of calving to recover and to get this feed intake upscaling this feed intake, and thus this will help these cows to recover again. So what happened in this period, that the feed intake goes down, and the NEFA, which is the non-essential fatty acids, goes up, and this will of course support animals. And as Dr. Ousama said, that fat is important, ketones are important, it's a source of energy. So we want that this cow mobilize some fat so they can support the first days after calving, support milk production, and of course support the energy levels in these animals. But at the same time, when cows start to recover after calving on feed intake, this NEFA drops down, won't be any excessive NEFA, production, and this will lead to a very normal case of a cow calved and have a nice life and good reproduction, and survival for the next lactation. While, next slide, please. While when you look at this next slide, you see that, sorry for that. No, it's the same slide that's showing the increase of propionic acids and the NEFA. So the same slide, we take it and we say, when we have an increase or drop in a bigger drop in feed intake, and this feed intake won't recover. So it will recover slowly after calving. This will show in this line here, the black line, it will be lower in feed intake, and this will take time to recover, and this will give us a chance to NEFA to be much higher. So NEFA will be up higher. We say always that we need to be below 0.4 milliequivalent, okay, per liter of NEFA, starting before calving, 7 days before calving, to be sure that we are having a good future for this animal. So when it goes up to maybe 0.6, 0.7, and this will lead to an excessive mobilization of fat. And this is the problem. So this will put a huge load on the liver to mobilize this fat and to oxidize this fat and get rid of this fat accordingly through different routes. One of them is VLDL. So the VLDL route is very important, that cows can just transfer this fat, break down this fat, transfer it, and bring it to better fat production. And the rest will be converted to what? Ketones. And the ketone is a measure. It's good when it's not a lot in the blood. When it's produced a lot, it will be acting as a toxic product and this metabolite, and this will be the start of the problems, metabolic other problems. Can you move, please? 2 slides, 1 and 2 slides. Yeah. So again, we look at the inflammation. We say there's an healthy inflammation. Every cow, every lady, woman in the world, when they have delivery or calving in cows, we will have this case, healthy inflammation. So the delivery, the injuries during delivery gives the immune system a shock and makes it works properly to defend this animal or to defend, the humans. So accordingly, with these normal cases, healthy inflammation, no complications, a fast recovery will happen because we know that there is enough fuel for these neutrophils or for the immune system to fight against these small injuries, and these cows will fastly recover, and they will what will happen? A metabolic adaptation. So cows will adapt, the body will adapt on what's happening, and then everything will be perfect. While on the other side, when we see a complex inflammation, where you have inflammation and cows, they cannot survive, and the immune system cannot support these animals because of the lack of, could be glucose production, because we know it's a fuel for neutrophils, or because of the increase of NEVA levels and ketones, because ketones are toxic to everything, including neutrophils. So it can be toxic to neutrophils. So accordingly, you will have a slow recovery with these animals, and accordingly, you will see a long extended negative energy balance with these animals. You will have more metabolic problems, infectious disorders will be shown on these animals, and of course, accordingly, delay on fertility, problems on reproduction, and these cows can be leaving the herd in the future. So, or at the first 60 days. So next, please. Accordingly, if you look at the global farm threats, this is the whole picture. This is I used to drive this picture in my mind here on my board. I used to look at this picture every time I see, if I don't have these problems. What if I don't have these problems? Okay, so this is the perfect life. What if I don't have these problems? So the global farm threats are including what? Including, as Dr. Ousama said, I mentioned on his presentation, feed intake is important. Feed intake is important. We should have better high feed intake before calving. The higher the feed intake before calving, I would say, the better the life of this animal after calving. So, and this, if cows have low feed intake, it will generate what? Generate high NEFA. We said that low feed intake, it's high NEFA, and then accordingly will generate low glucose production because the liver is compromised. Okay, it's working hard to mobilize, to sort of oxidize all this NEFA. So this will lead to what? Low propionic acid, low glucose production, high NEFA, and this is all against the regulations, against the rules that we want to see in our herd. So accordingly, you start to see all these milk fevers, clinical ketosis, subclinical ketosis. Of course, I saw a lot of my life of other edemas. I know we were linking other edemas to some problems in nutrition, and I was sometimes challenging my nutritionist in the farm, telling him, listen, we have a problem, we need to do this, we need to do that. But I discovered that other edema is also a problem that can come from, or that can be generated from the fat mobilization. Okay, so it's all together come on a stage where you see these cows are compromised and they cannot do their job on production. Of course, peak production after calving, we want the peak production is important for us, and of course, leading to different problems, using a lot of antibiotics in the farm, using a lot of injections, a lot of drenching, and this is all creating, of course, high expenses and a lot of time-consuming business in the farm. And this is again you have less focus, and you go. We say as was said, where focus goes, energy flows. So you start to focus on problems, and you forget about the prevention, right? So this is important for us to think prevention. Okay, I have it in the back here. Prevention is better than cure. So it's important for us to do prevention and not curing cows. So all this will lead to bad reproduction performances if these cows stay in the herd, and accordingly for a high culling rate. And this is the problem we start to see more cows in this herds. Next, please. If we look at this slide here, it's a very interesting from Gordon study, 2013, a study showing a publication showing the first 6 days after calving, and 30 to 50% of cows experiencing one or more metabolic infectious problems. So imagine half of your cows are experiencing this. You see it, you don't see it. This is a different story. But these cows are having the problems the first 60 days, and 25% of these cows are leaving the herd. They could die, they could be sold, they could be just being non-productive, and then you will get rid of them at the end of the year. So all these cases are real cases. I mean, this is right, and I have been in this life for many years in my life, and I have seen this, and I'm sure all the attendees today are listening to us are seeing this in the farm. So we will need to be sure that we don't have this picture, or maybe we'll have to control this picture. Please, Morgan. Thank you. Activating liver enzymes. So it's important for us to work on. I mean, our bodies or the animals are relying on enzymes. Enzyme activity is very important. So we have something called gene expressions. We have something called enzyme activities. All these are important for animals and for humans, for our bodies to next please, which take care of all the metabolic reactions happening on the cell level, could be cell level, and it's also on the mitochondrial level. So when you look at the mitochondria as the engine of the cell, so when we look at the mitochondrial level, we say that it's what's happening there is very important. Okay, so on the liver side, we say very important task for the liver: glucose production, gluconeogenesis, and of course fat oxidation. Very important text, and of course for intoxication role. So the major part here, where we're discussing glucose less glucose production, when we're discussing low feed intake, okay, we need to discuss the gluconeogenesis. How can we improve gluconeogenesis? Okay, so two paths. We need to have a good feed intake, which is create more propionic acids, and this will be converted in the liver to sugar. I make it simple. Okay, and of course, accordingly, if you don't have this, you need to activate enzymes responsible for this glucose production. If the enzymes are deactivated, okay, or are less activated, the glucose production will be lower, and of course, the fat oxidation will be lower. So we will need to have these two things working together to make this liver working properly and functioning. So accordingly, if we have these roles, we need to have activating enzymes. So there's vitamins and nutrients are very important, and they are very, very specific in activating these enzymes. They are switching on these enzymes, making them working to improve all these metabolic reactions. So accordingly, if you see that you have in this picture here, you have different vitamins are involved in these activations are involved, and this would, with the end of this, will be what production of ATP, of energy. So it's important that we create more energy. So accordingly, you will look at this, and we see all these vitamins here and amino acids are involved in these reactions. They are enzyme cofactors, enzyme activators, okay, and at the same time they are also antioxidants, because they work against toxicity and against oxidative stress. So in the heat stress, as Ousama presented, in the heat stress is a lot of compromised, ways of making this cell not working, make this mitochondria not working. Accordingly, we will need to have nutrients supporting, or anti-oxidative stress nutrients, okay, antioxidant nutrients supporting the mitochondria. Accordingly, we will need to have these vitamins. If you look at this slide here, you can see a lot of vitamins are involved, mainly B vitamins. Mainly B vitamins are involved in all these activities. Okay, next, please.
And also, Abdullah, I want to say one thing. Mr. Dr. Burhanuddin say hello. He taking care of these topics about the cell oxidative stress. He said it is not possible to separate heat stress from oxidative stress. He mentioned about this topic.
I agree. It's impossible. I agree. So accordingly, if you look at thank you, Burhanuddin. We will meet you soon in Turkey for sure. accordingly, if you look at the B vitamins and the ruminant degradation of these B vitamins are huge. If you look at the folic acid, riboflavin, pyridoxine, pantothenic acid, all these B vitamins are degraded, are highly degraded in the rumen. So bugs, they make B vitamins. I want Ousama to correct me if I'm wrong. Bugs creating B vitamins and bugs eating B vitamins. So they consume it. So maybe let's say 20% of bugs they produce them, and 80% they consume them. So imagine this process is happening all the time inside the rumen. While in the heat stress, okay, you start to see what compromised. Population of these bugs, they will be compromised. Accordingly, the production of these B vitamins will be lower, much lower. Accordingly,
lower intake as well.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. According, the need of B vitamins will be higher. So this is why we thought about this maybe a long time ago. While I was presented B vitamins in my life, 2004, okay, by Jefo. I was a veterinarian working in a farm and a farm manager. I was looking at this saying, oh, why I need B vitamins? These guys, they can make B vitamins. Why I should have B vitamins today? Okay, so and I presented this to my team, and they said, okay, why we need to do? I go, listen, what if we try and it happened and that B vitamins are deficient, and then we get results from this? So let's try it. Let's make a try, and if it doesn't work, we take it out. So what will be the loss and what will be the gain if it works? Okay. So accordingly, my friends, we will need to look at this as a measure because the degradation is huge. Next, please, Morgan. Okay, so just one example on one B vitamin is very important one for cows and for humans. Okay, so my wife was taking B vitamins during her pregnancy. Your wife, his wife, all these ladies, they take folic acid during pregnancy because it's important for embryo production. Embryo survival. It's important for liver health. It's important for milk protein production. Okay, and it's important for cellular division. It's very important. We look at every cow in the herd and we say it's preparing well, it's getting very well, the other is getting prepared, everything is good. So what is involved in this is cellular division. The more the cellular division, the better the preparation of these animals. So it's important that, and there is no much time. I mean, there is before calving, after calving, and then there's no more cellular division. This is the only time that happens. So we need to support the animal. Look at this folic acid, how it goes down. It goes down during the first days after calving, and maybe starting before calving, it goes down maybe to 0 or maybe over 0. So we will need to be sure that this folic acid is available for these animals. It's available. Okay. And this is also an important task for us to make it happen. Go ahead, please. Okay, so drenching, injecting, we have discussed this part, and we said that it's an amazing practice. It's a long-term practice. It's a treatment practice. It's not a preventive practice. So whenever you say, I'm a veterinarian, you are veterinarians, nutritionists today with us, whenever you say it is not the best practice. But sometimes we resist to change. We don't want to change. You know what? I do it. I like it. I don't want to change it. It's your call. It's important to think about changing sometimes, because changing, the world is changing. Today, we had last year we had COVID, and everything was changed. So we want to adapt and change. If we don't adapt, we won't be existing. So we adapt. This is why, again, Morgan, please, next slide. This is why we have to inject, we have to supplement, and this is normal practice. Next slide, please. So yeah, drenching, I don't want to present this because everybody knows the drenching cost. Everybody knows the expensive cost of drenching, not just because of drenching, not just because of the liquid I mix it and I drench it to cows. It's because of the time consuming, because of honestly, I tell you, we kill cows sometimes by drenching. Don't tell me no. We kill cows sometimes by drenching. So it's important for us not to make a lot of work and just find the easiest way to make the cow. So what is better for you? Is it better to drench, inject dextrose, glucose, pushing sugar inside the liver from these injections, or better to make the liver make its own glucose? And this is what we want. We want to make the liver produce its own glucose. It's important. Then we don't need to treat, we need to prevent. Next, please. Okay, next. So Jefo have created a technology. It's called a Micrometrics technology, and this technology is behind producing a product protected by B vitamins. Two blends of nutrients are protected, and these B vitamins are embedded. They are embedded in a fat matrix, triglyceride matrix. It bypasses the rumen and it goes to the intestines. It's absorbed 75%. 25% we leave it. We don't ignore the bugs. We leave it for the bugs. It's important that we feed these bugs during these heat stressors, including heat stress. So we feed the bugs and we go and we give the rest of the product to the animals to give a chance to the liver to be functioning and healthy. Again, it's targeted and it's safeguarded. There is no problem with it. It's palatable. Cows can eat it without problem, and of course, it's safeguarded for all staff working with the feeds and the mixing. Go ahead, please. Two products that I want to present today, and I want to give you a bit of a few slides on the trials and commercial trials and studies. I don't want to expand a lot, but we can share with you whenever you want. Any paper you see today, it's important on the slides, or anything you have a question on it, we will share with you. We have a pile of papers that can show all the importance of these vitamins. A transition product, it's a special blend for transition cows. It's including folic acid, riboflavin, choline chloride, and B12. And this is a very specific blend that it works in this particular time. We have discovered this many years ago, and we know that this product can work and can help and can give, profits to the farmers. 100 grams per cow per day for 21 days, or before calving, 14 days after calving, or according to what we advise you. If you tell us how is your system working on transition cows. Lactation, which goes on today, it's a heat stress. It is a great product for heat stress, very great product. We have using it in most of the countries where we have heat stress, including USA, Middle East. We see a lot of improvements on milk production, milk components. I will show you later on some slides on this presentation. 3 grams per cow per day, very tiny product. 3 grams per cow per day, 1.5 grams of vitamins, 1.5 grams of mixed vitamins. Okay, change the life of an animal of 600 kilograms. Imagine. So we work on precise, details on the animal. We work on gene expressions where they change, or biomarkers. We change and we make upregulations of these biomarkers or down-regulating of these biomarkers according to what is better for the animal. Go ahead, please. Okay, I'll go through some papers just fast, let you know, and then we can share with you all these details later on if you would like. From improved energy balance, this is using transition VB in cows. Starting 21 days before calving, we have improved feed intake up to 1 kilogram, and it continues up to 21 days, and we have stopped the product, using the product on 14 days, and it continues also on 22 to 28 days. So it's still continuing this improvement of feed intake, no matter if you keep the product there or you take it out. So we have done a huge improvement on these animals by increasing feed intake in this paper, in this study at University in Canada, at Guelph University. Okay, go ahead, please. Yes. So very interesting study for Morrison, 2018, Guelph University, very interesting. And we were wondering why the liver is functioning properly when we use these products, when we use the transition VB product. 55% of less liver infiltration, 55% the first 3-5 days. And you have also 31% less on the 13-15 days. So we continue making this infiltration less, and we continue digesting, making the liver digesting fat, getting rid of this fat. Okay, go ahead, please. So again, 28 trials, 14,000 cows. We had this is a meta-analysis, of course. It's in different countries in the world, and we have seen also a nice picture on these using these B vitamins. Next, Morgan, please. If you look at this again, next, please, just to show the final results. So the final results is to improve health and meta-analysis, 28 studies. Look at this: retained placenta drop minus 13% less on retained placenta, mastitis 22% less on mastitis, 27% less on metritis. Okay, according to what we had and what they had in the farm. So less on what they had in the farm. Okay, BHBA, of course, 40% less on what they had in the farm. If they have 20%, we have 20% less. So, and then involuntary culling, of course, a drop of 42%. So all these were also improvements. Confirmed pregnancy up to 33% more confirmed pregnancy. So all this improvement is not a magic. I mean, we just improved liver functioning, we just improved the health of this animal. And when you have a healthy animal, you have better production and you have better reproduction. Go ahead, please.
Abdullah, also we confirmed those kind of numbers from Turkey at the farms.
Yes, we have a lot of commercial trials that we can share with you. I would say a lot of observations from animals, for animals from different farmers in the world. A lot of observations showing the same picture in different way. So effect on milk production, the same meta-analysis showed us an effect on milk production of increase of 40 grams per cow per day on milk fat. And I know that milk fat is important. Milk protein maybe is not important for most of the countries, but it's still an important task for us to deliver, and we are delivering it. 50 grams of per cow per day, and of course increase energy corrected milk by 0.93 kilograms per cow per day. So we had improvement in milk production and milk components, and this is all related to what? To feed efficiency. We increased feed efficiency in these animals. I have a slide. I have a study showing up to 5-7% more feed efficiency with these animals in California Davis University.
And also there is a questions about these slides from Mr. Haluk. He asked you, can we say that we can use B group vitamins against milk fat depression apart from supporting reproduction?
I'll give Ousama to answer this question.
Yeah, I think we can discuss that at the end. Maybe we'll have 10 minutes for questions. I'll let just Abdallah finish his thoughts, and then we'll take over. I think Abdallah, a few more minutes.
Yes, 2-3 minutes more.
Okay, I will keep it.
Sure, Haluk. Thank you, Haluk. Okay, so go ahead, please. So again, not to go deep on this, this is an interesting paper we did, because we always said that okay, B vitamins are important, but what if a cow they have low milk production? So cows with low milk production, is it important to feed them B vitamins? I have this question many times in China, many times also in other countries that they have a decent milk production. Okay, so we said okay, yes, I think it's important. I think if these cows are challenged, but we never had a paper behind this. We had a paper today. We can see that no matter if the milk production is low or not, it's still important to use these vitamins because the deficiency is still there. So the ruminal supply is low in this mainly in heat stress or in different stressors. Of course, the B vitamins requirement will be higher, as we said before, and accordingly, the metabolic stress will be a must during this metabolic stress to use these B vitamins and improve the presence or the sufficiency of these B vitamins. Okay, go ahead, please, Morgan. Thank you. Okay, so improve reproduction during this stress. It's important for us that we have cows producing and reproducing. Longevity is our target. We need to keep cows in the herd. We need to keep high longevity in the herd. We need to keep more cows. The cows is costly. I know the Middle East part, the Turkish part. I mean, if you look at all these countries, that they have a lot of importation on a yearly basis of these cows. Okay, so this is an important task for us to make this longevity better. And I have seen this, and I will tell you a story. And I know that this will take half a minute from my time and from your time. From Ukraine, we had a farm with 5,000 cows in Ukraine. Danish manager. He told me one way. He told me, listen, I have used the product for 2 years. This year I won't import any cows. He used to get like 300 cows importation every year, 300 heifers every year. He said, this year I will spend this money on building a new barn because I have more cows in my herd, and the cows I have in the herd have saved me a lot of money. So longevity is important. When you talk about 20% more, okay, or sorry, 20% less on culling rate, it's huge. I mean, it's huge. So we need to look at this also important. And I want you, if you want to use the product to measure this. It's important for me and for you to measure this parameter. Go ahead, please. Okay, so again, on health and reproduction, we have seen less metritis, 33% less metritis in a commercial trial in Mexico. We have seen 41 less return placenta, and it's important, health, and which leads to better reproduction, right? 35% more increase in first conception rate. We have seen this just by using transition VB, and we have seen a continuous improvement on pregnancy rates in the lactation, during the lactation, by adding lactation VB in the product, so that using the program itself, both of them will give the more profits to the farm. Okay. So heat stress reduce milk performance, and we know that it's always milk performance is compromised having heat stress in our territory. I know that we have lost a lot of milk production with these animals, and we're losing every time we have heat stress. As Ousama showed, that there is heat stress time, and there is also after heat stress, and this is the measure, the highest, I mean the highest loss when cows start to have less milk production. Accordingly, in this paper, very interesting, showing that 3.8 kilogram energy corrected milk plus 3.8 the first 3 months after calving. It's a huge, I mean, when you look at, because when we say the first 3 months, it means the first 100 days after calving, right? And this is the half of the milk production of the animal. So if you look at the milk production total, you are having, let's say, 8 tons of product, 8 tons of milk, 4,000 liters or 4 tons of milk is the first 100 days. So we want to keep cows awake and strong enough to get this milk production at the first 100 days. And this is what we are seeing here, including the increase in butter fat and, of course, the protein production. Yes, Morgan. Thank you. Okay, so last slide, just to show you, you can believe it or not, $500, $50 in Canada. I have seen this in China, and I have seen more than that in China. I have seen more than this in the US, and I have seen less than this in other countries like Eastern Europe. So I would say it's between $350 and $500. I would say return on investment goes up to 5 to 1, 7 to 1, 10 to 1, according to the needs on both products together. So what we are targeting metabolic problems. We are targeting days open. We have seen a lot of decrease of days open. We are targeting service per conception, less straws used on animals to breed. And of course, we are targeting days open. Okay, again, with the lactation product, we are targeting milk production, milk fat, milk components, and of course, diameter intake. So all of this bring us to 5 to 1 or 7 to 1 return on investment, which is, I mean, it could be huge for me as a farmer, as a nutritionist, as a veterinarian. It's a good investment. I think we need to think about this investment together. And I want to thank you again for all of you being with us today. And sorry for this inconvenience of presenting my slides. Again, I'm not a very technology person. So thank you again.
It was not a big deal. Thank you for good presentation, Abdullah. We are on the question and answer sections. Dr. Ousama has a few questions in your hand. You can ask.
Yes.
And answer them.
Yeah, thank you. We've got a large number of questions. That's thank you for your interest. Some of these questions are focused on the immune response, and I can really basically describe it, try to answer all these questions at once. Is that heat stress does impact the immune system, but that depends on how that reaction. So it could be, if it's a severe heat stress, it's an acute response to it, or if it's more a chronic heat stress. But what we know is that it does involve the immune system, both the humoral and the cell mediated, so both short-term response and long-term response. And we have a lot of data that simply comes from monogastric that also involves the impact on the fetus and the calf immune response. And it really depends also whether their leaky gut is involved. We know in the rumen and the GI tract, with acidosis and all this transformation of these bugs into the kidneys and the liver. We do have liver abscesses in ruminant. It's common and it's in the kidney. So we know a lot about how maintaining the gut integrity can help us improve the longevity of these cows. So it's a really, I'm not an immunologist myself, but I've read a lot about this topic, and I see we're yet to know how well involved this immune response. So I'm just going to leave it at that point, but there's a question about the cytokines. Yes, usually hormone stress get elevated during heat stress, even in us human. So cortisol usually spikes up, and that could be associated with a reduction with the interleukins, IL-4, 5, 6, and 12, for example, which are our cytokines. But the intensity of this response could really vary. I want to jump quickly into the milk fat depression question. Really, as far as milk fat depression, you have to start with the basics. You have to make sure that you don't have acidosis, and that's where I'm just going to go back quickly to one of my slides. Morgan, can you give me the screen sharing feature back again? Okay, there we go. So this all goes back to your guidelines for formulating your ration. I think using a software would be very essential, but it's all about maintaining that physical effective fiber. So if you're looking at physical effective level, fiber level, let me eraser. Okay, highlighter, there we go. Physical effective fiber is the most important part and usually overlooked. So your NDF is not sufficient in the ration, or the ration is too fine. That's where I would start if you want to look at milk fat depression. Now, what I refer to NDF, it might be different depending on how you measure it. My NDF, I look at minimum, for example, of 30%, but my NDF is already corrected for ash. There's no contamination in starch or nitrogen. So your level might be 35. The second thing for milk fat depression I would look at is the starch fermentability. You can have a dry corn or you can have dry wheat. So this is also impacted. Make sure that you do not, some people say, oh, you can feed up to 32%. I'd say that's really not accurate. You make sure that you know how fermentable your source of starch is. And the main point, which basically I spent my PhD work on, is the level of the saturated fatty acids. If you're feeding a lot of soy products, a lot of product that has 18-2s, the linoleic acid, you're not necessarily feeding any oils, but this comes with the byproduct. We feed a lot of distillers here in Canada, cottonseed levels. All of this grain byproduct or corn byproduct can bring in a lot. So if you do basically effective fiber, fermentable starch, you take care of all the saturated, it would be good. Now, what I talk about maximum, for fat, you're maximizing fat. You basically, your best source is to feed a lot of saturated fats, based on your ration, but you can go up to 1 to 3%. These could be rumen protected, so it does not interact with the bugs in the rumen. It can also provide something that just goes straight into the milk, but it is all a balance between putting all these nutrients. Now, B vitamins, as Dr. Zankar mentioned, it can improve the metabolic efficiency in general. So we talk about intake efficiency, we talk about metabolic efficiency. Not all cars has the same efficiency, so does cows. So with the B vitamins as cofactors, it can improve basically utilization of these nutrients, as Dr. Zankar showed the slides where there was, in this meta-analysis, 65 different studies. I had the pleasure to go over. There was 40 to 50 grams increase in the yield for fat and protein, and that adds up. This is 1 cow at the time for 1,000 cow during that heat stress. So this is basically we can devote a whole session to just talk about milk fat depressions and what you do troubleshoot. And hopefully if someone shares a ration with me, say I've got milk fat depression, I would be gladly break it down and tell you what the best strategy to be. But it's all about improving the overall metabolism. As we see, heat stress is not just intake, but also metabolic stress. And we talk about the oxidative stress, and that's where we talk about vitamin E, we talk about vitamin B6, we talk about other antioxidants, selenium, for example, that can help in the animal to cope with that stress. There's more research on B9, basically a recent paper in 2020 that came up about how folic acid, as Dr. Zankar also mentioned, can help in mammary gland coping by generating anti-nutrients to allow these different cells to cope with that stress. So there's a lot of, it is a very wide topic, and you see we're very excited. We both kind of gone over time, but I look forward. These are the questions that I have on the English side, given the time. If there's any English, any on the Turkish side, Murat, I'll be very happy myself and Dr. Zankar to address them as well.
Okay. I guess we almost finalized our presentations. If we don't have any questions right now, I would like to say thank you for all attenders. They were being with us since beginning of the presentation, and also I would like to thanks for speakers, Mr. Dr. Ousama and Dr. Abdullah. You given it too much information, and some of them was interest for me. I'm sure the attenders will get it too much useful information on their farms. If you want to say something, after you, I would like to finish this webinar. It's your turn.
Again, thank you so much for your time, and I hope it was worth it. I know it's a very complicated topic, and we can talk about this for hours. And again, thank you so much for your time, and look forward to a future seminar where we can focus more on various topics. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you guys for joining us again, and I have a few questions, of course, on my screen here, and I will for sure we'll try to answer this question and send it to you on your emails. We have them, and again, we wish you a great day or evening, and we keep in touch for sure. Take good care, guys.
Thank you for all my technical team on the backside, and also it was the first trial for us to do simultaneous translate for Turkish attender. It will go on for further webinars. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye.